Hello students, it's Dr. Yu. We're now on to part 2 of our data visualization series. We're going to focus on textual visualization first. Now you're probably wondering, why textual visualization first? Well, before we can even talk about quantitative data, we need to understand how to visualize qualitative data. Because I feel like the most common problems that people have with PowerPoint is they don't know how to visualize text. So this is where they do the boring death by PowerPoint slides because they aren't aware of what else they can do to make text look better and to make it more visual. So here's what we're going to do in this segment. First, we're going to look into what is textual visualization and what exactly does that mean. Secondly, I'm going to give you a bunch of tools that you can use to visualize text. So how do you visualize text? I'm going to give you a long list of tools you can use. And then thirdly, we're also going to look at how do you visualize simple numbers. So if you just want to show one number, how do you visualize that? And I'll teach you some principles to help make those look good as well. After this segment, then we're going to get into tables, and then after that, we'll get into graphs. So let's get to it. What is textual visualization? Well, let's start with a little bit more abstract. Let's look at a continuum of abstraction. Now, let's say I was giving a speech about basketball, and maybe it was about the history of basketballs, like specifically how the basketball was invented and how it was made and the evolution of the basketball, let's just say. Now, if I was giving a speech about basketballs, if I wanted to be very concrete about what a basketball is, and I really wanted to make this a very concrete presentation where the audience really gets to engage with the basketball, then on a continuum of concrete to abstract, I would probably show a photo of a basketball, right? If I'm giving the audience an informative speech about basketball and I'm using PowerPoint, I better show some pictures of basketballs. And a photograph of the basketball is going to be pretty realistic. Now, there is something more concrete than this. Can you guess? What's more concrete than this is if I brought in an actual basketball into the presentation. So I brought one with me and I let the audience hold it in their hands. So more concrete than a photo of a basketball would be an actual basketball in your hands. But let's just say I can't bring in a basketball, or whatever it is that I'm speaking about doesn't have like a physical manifestation. Okay, if I want to go a little bit less concrete than a photo of a basketball, what else could I display of a basketball? Well, I can show a computer graphic of a basketball. So it's a little less concrete because it's a graphic of the basketball. It's not going to give you all of that detail that a photo would. If I want to be a little bit more abstract, I might do like a cartoon photo of a basketball. So even more so than a computer graphic, the cartoon just doesn't have the same realism to it. You can tell one's a cartoon. Maybe you can be fooled into thinking this is a real basketball, but you know that this one right here is clearly a cartoon. If I want to go a little more abstract, could I go more abstract? Sure. I could do like a black and white drawing of a basketball, and then you clearly know that it's a drawing, right? It's a more abstract version of what a basketball is, and you can clearly see that. But then I can go more abstract. Sure, I can. An even more simple drawing of a basketball, let's say. Now, this also looks like it's computer generated too, but you get the idea. It's just the lines of a basketball in a circle, somebody who's brand new to drawing before they took Art 300 and drawing and learned how to do space and hatching and all those things. Much more abstract, but you get that it's a basketball because it's a circle and the special of the lines. But then you can go even more abstract, can't you? Like, can you go more abstract than just a little picture of a basketball with no detail? Sure you can. The symbol for basketball is also an abstraction. We recognize those lines, even though it's not a complete basketball, the way the lines are shaped and all that, you know it's referring to basketball. Just like you've seen those football shirts where it doesn't show a complete picture of a football, but just part of it, just like that. You recognize that as a symbol for basketball. So clearly this is not even a complete picture, but you know the symbolism and you know it means something like this. Now, can you go more abstract than this? And do you know how you can go more abstract than this? The word basketball. The word basketball is an abstraction of this thing, and really an abstraction of an actual basketball in my hands. The basketball just serves as a symbol for this. Now, can you go more abstract than this? And do you know how? You can go more abstract than this. So you have the word basketball. How can you get more abstract than words? How about this? A bunch of descriptor subwords that try to tell you what this is. So you don't know the word, so you just throw out these descriptives, and then we get, okay, I think you're referring to a basketball. So that's like the most abstract that you can potentially get when referring to basketball. Now, why am I showing you this? Here is the problem that people face with PowerPoint. And I feel like if people just understood textual visualization, a lot of problems would go away. Most people, when they present on PowerPoint, they live here. All of their slides are basically this. They pick the most abstract way of presenting ideas, and it's not very concrete to the audience. And so the audience doesn't really see the point because you put everything in textual symbolic language, and that's not what you're trying to do in PowerPoint. What you're trying to do in PowerPoint is you're trying to show the audience your point. You're not just telling them the point, you are showing them the point. To show them means to be visual. So your goal in PowerPoint, your goal when you have visualization and all this stuff, is to take abstract concepts like this and make it as concrete as possible. That's what you're trying to do in PowerPoint. You're not trying to just take abstract concepts and keep them abstract. No, you're trying to visualize. You're trying to take everything on this side and move it over to this side, is what you're trying to do. And so that's what textual visualization is about. Taking those words and making them as real and concrete as possible instead of just telling us the word. So this is what ends up happening. I call it textual transfer. You write a speech and you're like, here's my text. Okay, great. And then you're like, okay, I'll just copy my text onto the PowerPoint. Okay, that's not textual visualization, that's textual transfer. Textual transfer is bad PowerPoint. It doesn't show us anything, it doesn't tell us anything new. And then you have problems like people who just read off their slides because they basically just transferred their text onto the PowerPoint, and then it just becomes another script for them. So we can see that there are problems with textual transfer, and that is not what we're doing. So no, that is not what we're doing when we're presenting with PowerPoint. We're not just doing textual transfer. What we're doing is textual visualization. We're taking our speech text, and then we're figuring out, how can I make this into something more visual and graphic? Something that would represent the text and would be easy for the audience to see and understand and to glance at instead of read at. So that's what textual visualization is about. Taking your text and turning it into shapes, images, forms, symbols. Taking the abstract and making it more concrete. So that's what we need to be able to do in PowerPoint. If you learn to just do this better, like your PowerPoints will be 1,000% better. Because I feel like this is where people mess up. This is a common situation where people just mess up PowerPoint. We have death by PowerPoint, we have boring PowerPoints, and it's just bad PowerPoint. So yes, this is what you want to do. This is exactly what you want to do. So, how do I visualize text? Well, let me give you some language and some tools to help you do just that. Let's take the typical PowerPoint slide, okay? So somebody's presenting, what is causing employee turnover? And then you have these little bullet points like high task demands that stress them out, lack of PTO and vacations, not allow rest and recovery, poor relationships with managers. Okay, so when you sit through bad PowerPoints, most people just go through slides like these, right? It's bullet point, and so I want to call them the lame bullet point slide, the LBP slide. So lots of lame bullet point slides, lots of words on them, people read them to you, and really what the audience does is they just read the slides instead of listening to you, so then you become superfluous as a presenter, and it's like, why do we even have you here if you're just going to read to us, and if you're just going to put everything in writing for us? So this is what we don't want to do. Now, to get past this, you have to think a little deeper about the information that you're displaying. So first, whenever you have information, I would say turn them into nodes. So little nodes are just a way of sorting out artifacts and ideas and how you want to display them. So what is causing employee turnover? We have a node here, high stress task demands, a node here, lack of PTO and vacations, a node here, managerial relationship issues. They sound like 3 separate issues. Cool. The next step is this. Okay, these are my nodes. These are the 3 things that are causing employee turnover. What is the relationship between these nodes? Are these nodes three independent, non-influential nodes? Like they're just three random directions that you just came up with? Or do these nodes have relationships to each other that we can display? Let me give you an example. Perhaps these nodes are a cluster. They belong in one category, and perhaps there's another cluster of nodes that belong in a different category. So you cluster the nodes, and so now you're showing that these belong in some kind of group. Okay, that's one way of showing a relationship. What about this? It's called linking, the use of arrows. Maybe when you look at these three causes of turnover, it's a linear flow concept. High stress task demands lead to lack of PTO and vacations, and that's what leads to managerial issues. So you have a one-way flow concept. Instead of just listing 3 bullet points, you're now showing a relationship between the ideas. So imagine this. Imagine I'm telling you a story right now. Okay, here's a story. This is a story about Bernie and Sarah. Bernie is a student. Sarah is another student. The end. Okay, cool story, bro, right? You're like, okay, how is that a story? You just told us about 2 different characters. Okay, so let me tell you the story again, but this time in a better way. This is a story about Bernie and Sarah. Bernie is a student, and so is Sarah. And they're actually in the same class. And also, Bernie has a crush on Sarah, and Sarah doesn't like Bernie at all. But then they got assigned to a group project together. And it's just Bernie and Sarah, actually, because their third group project member quit. And then what happens is, and then I leave it right there. What I did is I just didn't tell you about the existence of characters. I told you about relationships. And the action is in the relationships. And the plot is in the relationships. Bernie likes Sarah, but Sarah doesn't like him. And they've been put in the same group project. And then the third project partner quits. Okay, the relationship is interesting. Now you want to listen to the story instead of just there's Bernie and there's Sarah. That's what you need to be thinking when you're doing textual visualization. What is the action here? What is the relationship between the ideas? So then the action can be displayed instead of just the concept or the word. Let me show you some other types of relationships. Maybe you're going to do a circular concept. Maybe the point when you did your research on these three causes of turnover, maybe you found out that it's a circular concept. High stress task demands lead to lack of PTO, which leads to managerial relationships, which then causes high stress task demands because the managers are mad, and then people don't have lack of PTO as a result because maybe they use it all in the first week. Okay, you showed a circular concept here. That's much more interesting than what you showed before. Or maybe it's a convergent concept. Maybe what you're arguing is high stress task demands and lack of PTO together cause managerial relationship issues. So these 2 sub-issues are what causing this. So then you show that action. You show the action of this item and that item together cause this item. And that's interesting to look at. Now we can see there's some kind of point to the story instead of Bernie and Sarah. Now we have Bernie and Sarah like each other, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. Or multi-directional flow. Maybe some things flow off causes of employee turnover over here, like external event ideas, and these are internal event ideas, okay? This can also be a mind map as well. You could do like a mind map where you just say, okay, these are 3 causes of employee turnover, and here are the causes of them. So these are mental causes, and these are relational causes. Okay, great. Multi-directional flow or a mind map can all work here. You're showing us how these 3 nodes relate to each other. In this case, this is the theme, causes of employee turnover, and then these are 3 different ideas that come off of that. That's much more interesting than just, here's 3 boring bullet points, and I'm going to read them to you. Here, when you're presenting, you can say, okay, and you can make this a progressive slide, so you could just start off. Here are 3 causes of employee turnover. So you show that first. Let's first talk about the mental causes, and then 2, that pops up. First, lack of PTO, and then fourthly, lack of stress, like that's the 4th thing that will show up, and then you can go over here, this can be your 5, and then this can be your 6, right here. And then this beautiful slide just gets built up, and that's much more interesting than just looking at a bunch of bullet points. Then, borders. You can use borders for all kinds of things to demonstrate relationships. So borders are lines that just frame space. They set one set of items against each other spatially. So perhaps this could be like proven or not proven, or something belongs in a specific box or is within a specific category. Something is outside of that or is outside of that box or outside of that category. So you can use borders for that. You can also do something like this, like a little T-chart. Maybe these are changeable and these are unchangeable things. This little line can help establish relationships between the ideas, so then you can understand how the ideas interact rather than just how the ideas just sit there. Then you also have axes, and then there's two different types of axes. You have the ordered axis, and ordered axes are generally used with ordinal data. So data that's basically based on ranking or how things match up against each other in a hierarchy that is not necessarily quantitative. So perhaps maybe your argument is this: there's not just three causes of turnover, but perhaps there are some that you deem are least fixable and some that are more fixable by your company. So you put them on an axis. Okay, now we see something going on rather than just three independent causes. Or perhaps you can put it on a metric axis. So a metric axis is used for interval or ratio data. So data that's measurable by quantity. In short, I understand stats, but yes. Okay, so anyway, lack of PTO, maybe 30% of people are saying that. And then maybe 30% more people are saying high stress demands. And then 40% of people are saying managerial relationship issues. So you're measuring how much it is the case that these are the causes of turnover. Then you also have circles. Maybe you want to say this is within the scope of us fixing it, and this is out of scope. This is like outside of our reach of something that our committee or task force can fix as far as employee turnover goes. Yeah, maybe this is like a task force, and you're saying this is within the scope, and this is out of scope. So circles are really good when you want to approximate how close you are to a goal or to a specific target. Here's another example. You can do concentric rings. So you could say, in terms of what causes are, we could rank this as bad, we could rank this as worse, and we can say that this is the worst. So the more central it is, the worse it is. And then as you move out, it's like less terrible. So it's sort of like doing an ordinal axis, but you want to say that these somehow overlap in some way. Or you can also use target quadrants. So you could have like a little axis here, a north-south or an X and Y axis here, and then you can put specific items within the axes to help classify them a little bit more. So instead of just saying, here are three causes of turnover, you can then start classifying them as fixable, unfixable, bad for the company, bad for employees, and then you at least have some action here as opposed to, once again, just some static bullet points. Now, you can also use grids. Grids are great for a lot of reasons. Grids can help organize data. They can help make some things, put things in the categories. So you can do quadrants here, quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4, and assign axes like you did before. Maybe you'll establish columns and you'll say in this column is individual causes, these are relational causes, and these are compensation causes. Or you can do it the same way here as well. Grids are perfect for organizing data and showing some type of organization for a cleaner look. You can also do layers. So this is sort of like concentric circles. But if you want to say there's like 3 layers to this problem, so you have like the apparent layer, oh, we think it's stress. But actually, when we look deeper into it, it's lack of PTO and vacations. And actually, when we looked even deeper and we think we got to the root cause, it's the manager's fault. It's like the root cause kind of thing. But you're still acknowledging that these are still problems, but this is the root cause of the problem. Now, you can also use a metaphor. If you have some kind of image or like analogy or something that you think could speak to the problem, you could be asking like, where did the employee come from? And you can have little nodes under here. And what's powering the turnover? And then you can have like little nodes here. Where are the employees going? Nodes here. Who are we bringing value to? So you have like this airplane metaphor, and then you use that to help demonstrate or show a particular concept. Maybe you're talking about company growth and you use a plant. So you have like an actual plant or a tree, and the soil is like the customers or something and the profits, and then like the trees are like the branches are like the employees, and the leaves are like, I don't know, stock price. I mean, whatever. Just like a tree metaphor, a plane metaphor, anything that you think could help give some visualization and some concreteness to whatever it is that you're trying to show, totally fair game. Totally awesome way to present something. Or you can just use a picture. We're talking about turnover. What's a good picture that I can use to just show turnover? So here you go. You have a guy getting ready to leave a room with his boxes packed up. You know where he's going. He's going out the door. He's out. So maybe you would show, instead of using nodes, like just show a picture of employee stress and show a picture of conflict management or conflict with managers and so forth. A picture is worth 1,000 words. And in fact, you may not even need to have words under this. You could just say, what do you think this means? This is turnover. Today I want to talk about turnover, and then go into your thing. Cool. Or you can show a picture of a turnover. Get it? Aha. Okay, anyways. Some people are mad now. They're like, takes my time. Okay, all right. So symbols. If you can't find a picture of turnover, let's say, or of a turnover, if you're talking about those, but if you're just don't have any pictures, find something that you think would symbolize turnover. So I think an arrow like this would imply turnover, right? Like you're going into something and then you're like, no, never mind, I'm leaving. Okay, so there you go. So it's symbolically, you can use symbols that can help, that you think could exemplify the concept that you're trying to show, or the item that you're trying to convey. So you don't always have to think in terms of photos. You can think in terms of symbols as well. And those are really easy to find on PowerPoint. Now, we go back to this slide, this original lame bullet point slide. What some of you may be wondering, though, is, well, what if these 3 bullet points don't have any relationship at all, and they're completely independent from each other, okay? And there's just none of those things, okay, that I just showed. Well, first thing, I always challenge you to really think about, what are you putting on a slide and why? And if there's no action, do you really need to show it? And sometimes the real problem is people aren't really thinking deeply about their text slides and what it is that they're really trying to show. They just think that listing points is all they need to do, and that's a very shallow and superficial understanding of what PowerPoint is about. PowerPoint is about showing action. It's about going from abstract to concrete. So really think deeply about what it is that you're saying. But let's just say you're right. Okay, so there's no linking relationship, there's no axis relationship, there's no concentric circles. These are just 3 independent causes that have no bearing on each other. They're just, one's from the left, one's from the right, one's from north, one's from south. They just don't touch each other at all. Well, you have a few options, actually. You can do a mind map. A mind map doesn't necessarily say they are related to each other. A mind map just says, these 3 causes relate to a larger category, which is turnover. So you could always just do a mind map instead of this. But if you're just like, no mind maps, okay, fine. If you don't want to do a mind map, then what I would default to then is smart art. PowerPoint has a beautiful thing. It's called a beautiful feature. It's called smart art. When we get into the PowerPoint lecture, you'll learn about smart art. But you see how this looks better? Because number one, you have pictures associated with each of them. So I just went and found pictures. It took me like 3 minutes to make this slide, maybe less than that. And all I did was find a picture to go with each of the causes. This is way more interesting to look at than this. This at least has a little bit of a punch and maybe a little bit of humor if you think this is funny. And, you know, it just looks better. It looks better. It looks like you put more thought into it. It looks like you care about the audience and their attention and their time, versus just doing something like this that you put together in 20 seconds. So when in doubt, use smart art. Me at this level, like in my number of years using PowerPoint and doing hundreds now of PowerPoint presentations, most of what I use are draw tools and smart arts. I rarely ever use the regular PowerPoint slides as is. Now, let's say you're showing simple numbers. Let's just say you found this insight survey, and it was said that 68% of our customers rated our service as excellent. Now, you don't really want to do something complicated, like you could do a pie chart if you want, but you just want to do something simple here. You just want to emphasize the 68%. Well, here's what I recommend you can do, and this will work fine. All we did here, we simplified the sentence, and we used something called typographic diversity. We made this bigger, made this big and green so the audience could see it. We changed the font color of this. And actually, I think this is even a bigger font. I made this a different color. because I want the audience to know the 68% and I want them to notice the excellent. So typographic diversity, and then I made this italics. Typographic diversity is the mixing of font sizes and font styles and bold and italics and underlining to make a sentence or make something look more visually appealing because it has high novelty, but not so much novelty that it's too busy to read. So typographic diversity is huge on resumes, it's huge on cover letters, and it's huge on PowerPoint. Not too much to be too busy, but not too little to be too dull. This is dull. This is just right. I didn't make a busy version, so you'll have to make one yourself. In summary, what is textual visualization? Textual visualization is taking text that is abstract and making it as concrete as possible using visual language. How do you visualize text? Use all types of visualizing tools. I showed you linking, nodes, concentric circles, borders, squares, all kinds of things that you can do to visualize relationships and to visualize the action between the text, because that's what makes any slide interesting, is the action between the items, not just the items themselves. And how do I visualize simple numbers? I just showed you an easy way through typographic diversity. We could go more in depth on how to make numbers more concrete, but I want to save that for the persuasion PowerPoint or the persuasion lectures, because that gets a little bit deeper into that realm more than it does into visualization, although I understand persuasion and visualization kind of go together, but I just don't want to go overboard on things. So we'll save that for persuasion for now, but you learned a simple technique for now. In part 3, we're going to learn about tables and graphs. See you there.